The Scarlet Ibis is the retelling of the narrator's brother Doodle. The narrator is 6 years old when Doodle is born. Doodle is born with a cow. This means that his body is shriveled and that his head is bigger than the rest of his body. Everyone but his Aunt Nicey thinks that Doodle will not survive. His father even goes out to buy Doodle a coffin. Doodle miraculously survives, and when he's lived for 3 months, his parents decide to name him William Armstrong. The narrator likes to engage in outdoor activities around his rural home and wants a brother so someone can participate with him. The narrator's mother tells him that Doodle will never be able to walk or play like he does, quoting that, "He might not even," she sobbed, "even be all there," suggesting that he might not have high brain function either.
The narrator is ashamed of having a disabled brother. Doodle learns how to crawl at the age of 2, even though the doctors warn the family that the strain in Doodle's body will probably kill him for a weak heart. Doodle can only crawl backwards, which reminds the narrator of a doodlebug. The narrator then decides to call the brother Doodle because he thinks no one else will expect much from someone named Doodle. The narrator will often put Doodle in a go-kart, and since Doodle cannot walk, the narrator at first tries to resist Doodle, but then realizes that Doodle is his brother and he is stuck with him.
When Doodle is 5, the narrator feels embarrassed that Doodle still can't walk. As a result, he begins to train Doodle every day until he is able to walk. The narrator is shown to be mean to Doodle at times. He once took Doodle to their barn and showed him his own coffin and forced him to touch it. Even if the brother was hard on him, he still did eventually teach Doodle to walk. On his 6th birthday, Doodle was finally able to show this family his accomplishment. Everyone began to congratulate the narrator on teaching Doodle how to walk, but he begins to feel guilty because the only reason why he taught Doodle how to walk was because he didn't like Doodle being different. The brothers have fun and begin to tell each other crazy stories. Doodle will begin school in less than a year, and the narrator decides that he needs to teach Doodle how to play sports. The narrator forces Doodle to exercise as much as possible and pushes Doodle. While this is happening, Doodle's health becomes worse and worse, but the brother does not take this into consideration.
While the family is eating lunch, they hear a strange croaking noise from outside. They go to investigate and find an unfamiliar bird in a tree in their yard. The bird falls from the tree and dies before their eyes. They learn that the bird is a Scarlet Ibis from their father's bird book, and that the bird was flying north to North Carolina because of a storm. Doodle is saddened from the ibis's death and buries it himself. Later that day, the narrator and Doodle are returning home from yet another failed training session. When the storm begins to approach, the brothers start running to get out of the rain. The narrator starts to run ahead of Doodle, ignoring all Doodle's protests. The narrator later states, "I finally went back and found him huddled beneath a nightshade bush beside the road. He was sitting on the ground, his face buried in his arms, which was resting on his drawn-up knees. When the narrator lifts up Doodle's head, he quotes that he had been bleeding from the mouth, his neck and the front of his shirt were stained with brilliant red. He then realizes that Doodle isn't waking up. He shakes him and begins to cry and repeat his name repeatedly and weeps over his body. Doodle is dead."
This is symbolic because both the Scarlet Ibis and Doodle were different from their own species, meaning they were both deformed and crippled. They also were pushing their bodies to the limit. If Doodle wasn't working so hard to catch up with his brother, there may have been a chance of Doodle surviving the storm. The Scarlet Ibis could have also survived if it didn't push itself so hard to travel north. Doodle's death could have been an external conflict, and he was bound to die sooner than later because of his illness. One theme of this story would be never to take family for granted. Throughout the story, Doodle and the narrator form a relationship from their training, though the narrator doesn't realize it. But when the narrator decided to leave Doodle during the storm, he wasn't thinking about Doodle and the danger he was in. He was only thinking about himself. At times, the narrator is selfish. When Doodle died, the narrator immediately felt sorrow and regret, wishing he could go back in time and go back for Doodle. Doodle would be described as a loving and trusting character, always willing to do anything for the narrator and always wanting to be the best around him whenever he could.
Created using Powtoon.